it's a fitting matchup, I think, between the two of us to be doing this interview, because I have lived in London previously when I was doing my master's degree. So I feel a kinship whenever we are able to get a British guest on here, and it's fun.
And I'm a Londoner born and bred, so...
I was going to ask you that because, of course, a lot of creatives are based in London, but sometimes they're from elsewhere in the country, or perhaps from another nation entirely. You know, you've got the rest of the British Isles. So I love that you're a Londoner, though. I love London.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, London born and bred. So this is really my city, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, because you had mentioned that in an interview where you said, oh, I don't really like LA. London is my home. I want to stay here. You know, just...
I mean, I'd love to work in LA.
Of course
I would. But I'd love to leave and go home. I mean, home is home. It's just a different... I don't know. It felt, for me, LA felt it was full of transient people. I suppose if you were born there, you'd have your community, or if you were to work there and live there from somewhere else, you'd build a community. But when I was there, it felt sort of lonely-ish, if that makes sense, because everything is so spread out.
Yes, and the public transportation is just not it. So it's, unless you own a car.
Cars, yeah.
So I did want to ask you to share a bit about your acting origins, because I was reading up on you, and you had your drama school training, of course, but what inspired you to get into acting in the first place, and how did you get started professionally?
Okay, so I was always one of those children that's very, very shy. And my way of expressing myself was through acting. So not just play acting like children do anyway, but one step further. So at about 8 or 9, I literally remember lining my teddy bears up and my dolls and doing these little bits that I'd write, doing sort of theatre pieces for my dolls. I was a loner, and that was my way of, I don't know, expressing myself. And then I got more and more serious. When I was at school, I got involved in an agency which had lessons, extracurriculum lessons, so after school. And that's when my love of poetry came into play. And then I started doing festivals at 12, 13 with pieces of prose or pieces of or poems. So it was a way that I could escape being me. I know it sounds odd, but most actors are shy, to be honest. I wasn't a singing, dancing kind of child. It was very much an insular thing. And poetry showed me that there was a world outside there, outside of my little realm. And that world was something I wanted to explore. And what better way to explore than through characters?
So while I was researching you, I was very surprised to see a film in your body of work called The Carrier. And I first found out that you were in this because I was reading print interviews of yours to try to do my homework. And you had mentioned something, because of course this was a few years ago when you did this, about how, well, I didn't really know how to research this as well, because I've never experienced this, and I was trying to not laugh because it's horrible. But for those who don't know, it's about a pandemic. So do you want to share about that job, of course, and also now looking back on it and the new perspective that you have on that project because of everything going on?
It's extraordinary. We were all in shock. The beginning of this year, the rumblings of something called Corona was rumblings, and then it became a reality. So doing The Carrier, which was about how the world had overused antibiotics and become not immune, what's the word? They were no longer effective. So therefore people's diseases would eat them. And it got dog eat dog in the film, as in people with, what would happen is if you touch somebody, if you breathed on the, you know, the whole thing with Corona is basically how it would be spread. But the thing is, it was visible. So you'd come out in welts, your skin would start and that would be when you'd know, okay, chuck them off and leave them to die and save the ones without this pandemic. And it got to the point where very few people globally were able to get on planes trying to find somewhere which was neutral, where they could all be together and not carry the disease onto the plane. So the carrier would be the person inflicted with this horrible deficiency to antibiotics. Horrible.
Yeah, I watched it and I kind of regretted watching it. Not because it was bad, but just because I was going, I'm already not feeling well about the world, and maybe this was not the thing I needed to watch right now. But
do you know what's
a
even weirder?
respectably
Is
done film,
it
though.
actually started to do a hell of a lot better since the pandemic.
Oh my
so
gosh.
There are people out there with opposite views to us going, oh, let's watch pandemic films. You know, like, was it Outcry? There was one with something to do with monkeys, a disease carried through monkeys, an American film with Benito Martinez, who was at my drama school.
You keep talking, I'll look it up.
Yeah, he's fabulous. But something like Outcry or something like that. That again was another horrible pandemic movie. These times are really quite extraordinary. There's times I have to step back and think,
Outbreak?
This isn't a film. What was it called? Outbreak. Yes. Similar things. These types of films, for some reason, do really well. I've been doing really well during these unprecedented, sad times. Bizarrely.
Well, a fair bit of your work seems to end up feeling really timely or relevant, because I was just on Twitter today and I saw an article on BBC News about how the UK government is going to cut funding for projects that are supposed to educate and prevent or lessen LGBT bullying. And you did a film, I think it was called Just Charlie, that was about the trans community. So do you want to talk a bit about that project and also just the importance of the arts in educating people to be more empathetic towards groups that are often very ostracized
and marginalized? You're absolutely right. I think film and TV is extremely powerful medium, especially TV now. Now we're no longer able to go to cinemas. The TV, all you need is a TV and a remote control to reach people's homes. Just Charlie, the minute I read the script, even though I was playing a horrible character, I thought I need to be involved in this, because the thing that was particularly poignant about the piece was the fact that it was done through a 13-year-old boy's eyes. So, and it was in a time when Caitlyn Jenner had just come out. We'd had a boxing promoter in the UK who transitioned and went on to Big Brother. I think it was a bit of a shock for the UK. Again, you could feel, and I think in the UK, I don't know that we were accepting at that point. We weren't ready for Kelly Maloney. So doing a film where we all became globally aware, and that's probably to do with Caitlyn Jenner, that this exists. And there are times when people are living whole lives inauthentically. So doing a film where you see a 13-year-old boy and his journey was something that I without doubt had to get involved in, because it was a powerful story. I think, as I said, film and TV is incredibly important in terms of, rather than statistics, just getting into the hearts and minds of one person's journey, their emotional journey, is incredibly important to educate.
So you've done a wide array of work. You've been on television and you've done a fair bit of theater. Do you have a particular preference or maybe a favorite venue that you've done theater in? Because of course London has so many, not just London, the UK in its entirety, but especially London has so many different iconic theaters. I saw that you had done some productions at the Globe, and I know that the theater industry is sort of struggling right now because they're not really allowed to do shows. So what are your thoughts on your own theater career and then just the art of theater?
Okay, so the theatre is magical. There's something about the interaction, even though a story is being told separately from an audience in some productions, because of course there are many types of theatre. There's some theatre where people are standing up and it's called promenade and you're very much involved, but there's something about that interaction that's really powerful. When I worked at the Globe, I've got to tell you a secret. That was the last theatre I did. I was terrified, and I'm not sure why. The space is quite extraordinary. I mean, I'm not sure whether you're familiar with the structure of the building.
I've been to the Globe, yeah.
Right. So, as an actor, there are certain spots. There's one spot called the God spot where you can be seen and heard by everyone standing still. Now, I've been doing more and more TV, and I'm a big thing about how you can get in. You can get into somebody's soul through the eyes. Now, in theatre, there's a detachment because of distance.
Right.
And there was something about the theatricality of the Globe space that freaked me out. So, for example, I found the God spot. I was terrified of the space anyway when I was told that you have to keep doing figures of 8. So you could start a conversation with someone and then you'd have to look up. That already is very theatrical. And you'd have to look up, otherwise the guys in the gods see the top of your head. So there was a real technique that was very theatrical. So it wouldn't be about how TV or film or most theatre shows where you talk to somebody. And it's that communication is what I love. The interaction is what I love. It's very human. So I was freaked out when I was told that you have to walk figures of 8. And it sounds bizarre, but you had to keep moving. So there's an entrance and an exit, or 2 entrances on either side. The God spot is at the very front of the stage. And if you hit that point and you've got a similar sort of tonal voice as mine, you can whisper and be heard.
Wow.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary. But other parts of the stage, you'd have to keep moving, and everything was up there. Sorry, I'm just being theatrical, but
no, please go ahead.
But that's kind of what it was, and that freaked me out. And I was preset in the Godlings, and the Godlings is the area at the front where people would stand, and in olden days they'd throw tomatoes if they thought you were rubbish. So that was very exciting. I was preset in modern clothes in amongst the audience as they're coming in. And I kid you not, every single night I'd be going, oh my God, what's my first line? What's my first, oh my God, what's my first line? Internally, while there are audience milling around. I mean, I'd be terrified. But the minute I walked up the stairs and got to the God spot and turned around, everything went, all my fears went, and it was an amazing thing. But that really frightened me. If I do theatre again, it has to be the right thing. And I would imagine something smaller. So it's a very, very powerful medium. And I don't know why I was so freaked out. And it scared me. I honestly had stage fright every single time I was preset. I mean, my lines would go. The minute I went up the stairs, I'd be in the moment and everything would be fine. It would be gorgeous and wonderful. But that fear, it was really scary. But theatre is a very, very powerful thing and on many levels. So regardless of the established theatres, there's lots of small theatre groups that are doing stuff within the community, allowing young people to express themselves, which is how I got into it. Role playing. There are so many levels of theatre, and that's the thing that we all tend to miss, because we're talking about the large theatres not being able to work anymore or not being able to operate because of this pandemic. But the powerful stuff is the stuff that are in communities that we don't necessarily talk about, that aren't the big theatres, but are that small groups with children, young people, youth work. It's a really, really powerful medium on many levels, and it's an absolute shame that we are unable, because of safety, to, you know, to have that experience. I'm hoping we're going to be okay here. I'm hoping, you know, we all say the new normal. I hope the new normal does not involve theatre.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Of course. I mean, theater is sort of like one of the pillars of acting and of art. And when I went to the Globe, I saw The Tempest, and it had Roger Allam and it had Colin Morgan. I was very excited because I loved Merlin back in the day, and I love that in the UK there's a more varied approach to acting. So just because you gain a high profile doesn't mean that you refuse to do certain types of work. I mean, big names will do a run of Hamlet at whatever, you know, Harold Pinter or the Old Vic. And it's very common that, you know, they go, oh, well, I'm in between filming something in whatever country. I'll do a show, and you can see them. So I love that.
Yeah, it's really, really important. I think an actor who never does theatre doesn't know what they're missing. So even that fear, that adrenaline, there's something very raw about going, I am going to tell a story live. I, with a group of people, are going to tell you a story live, like they did in Roman times, Dionysus time, you know, back. It's one of the oldest forms of storytelling. So this film stuff, we've got CGI, everything keeps moving. Theatre is the bedrock of storytelling, full stop. You could, wherever you are, you know, you could be in a third world country, in a village. Storytelling is important, and there would be theatre in villages. That's how you passed on traditions. That's how you passed on stories from your forefathers. It would be through theatre. And I keep doing that because theatre doesn't necessarily have to be a building. If I went outside my front garden now with a group of people and we did a socially distanced storytelling and had people watching, that's theatre, you know?
Yes. And you're very accomplished, and so much so that you got an MBE. So do you do you want to explain for the people watching that are not British or not Anglophilic enough to know what that is? Explain a bit about what that means and the experience of you receiving that.
Okay, so an MBE, and they have different forms of these awards, but it's a recognition for your contribution in whatever field you're in. So they're starting to do more and more MBEs and OBEs for people in the arts, because they recognize that that's a very important part of our everyday. We're not saving lives, we're not, you know, charity workers, but there's something about the arts that save, I don't know, it's important to living. We all need escapism. And it's a recognition by the royal family, as it were, the institution, as it were, just to award you for your contribution to your field. It was quite an extraordinary experience. And now I've been watching The Crown. I don't know if you guys are totally addicted to The Crown on Netflix, but what was really nuts is The Crown mentioned the fact that, for example, Prince Charles absolutely loves theatre. I think last season, that one of his episodes, he talked about wanting to be an actor when he was younger. La la la. Absolutely true. I met him at the RSC. He's a patron of the Royal Shakespeare Company in Stratford, and weirdly, you could see when he'd go and see shows that he looked joyous, he looked comfortable, he looked at home. So I was really pleased that Prince Charles gave me my little medal. It's a sort of medal thing where there are people from all echelons of life who get awarded a little medal. In fact, my little certificate is up there, and that's my photo of my mum and me with my little award. But it was an extraordinary day going into Buckingham Palace, seeing the works of art. You're in a room before you go out, and it's this grand palace, and they'll say your name, and it's all very formal. I was terrified, and I don't know why. Can you see me?
Yeah.
Yes.
The audio went for a few seconds, but I think you're back now, so I think it's okay.
Sorry, yeah. It's quite a moving experience, because I also got to meet people I would never meet. You know, some royal army sergeants, charity workers, just extraordinary people, having chats in this room beforehand before you file out in groups and get your, I mean, it's all very formal with the, and yeah, it was an extraordinary day. Yeah, an extraordinary day. And again, it's allowed me to do more charity work. I mean, I've always done charity work, but with the MBE, it's allowed me to be unafraid of getting involved and giving back. So yeah, I'm very proud of it.
I know there's a lot of formality and pomp and circumstance with those events, but I love the pictures from when Emma Thompson became a dame, and she's wearing trainers to get her award. It's my favorite thing where I love it. She's participating in these old institutions and all this hullabaloo, but she's still, yeah, but I'm Emma Thompson, I'm coming in trainers.
Yeah, exactly. Weirdly, there's a dress code. It doesn't say no trainers.
Oh.
So one of the things is covering her head. So she might have had a hat. In fact, I think I've seen it, and she had the white trainers on, but it doesn't say no trainers. So I love the fact that she went, yes, I'm playing by the rules, with a little twist.
As she always does.
She's just fabulous.
I love that. So in regards to your television work, one of your most high profile jobs was Shameless, and you had to do a Manchester accent. So I was curious about what your approach is to learning new accents. I mean, presumably some accents are easier to pick up more than others, but I think from the few things that I was watching, you had a little bit of a different accent in almost all of the things that I watched.
I know.
Yeah,
I know. And I've only just realised that fairly recently. The last few jobs, there have been accents involved. That's part. So with Manchester, there were certain vowel sounds I'd get wrong, but it became second nature. I don't, with Shameless, I kind of did a broad Manchester before that, but I needed to get more specific once I got the gig, or just before I got the gig. And it would be working through the script phonetically. Once I did a couple of episodes, it became second nature. And of course, I was practically living up there. But it's a very warm sound. There's something really warm about a Manchester accent. And then, of course, in Manchester, if you were going to be even more detailed, just like in London, you could have an East End of London sounding different,
like
to
Danny
a North
Dyer
Londoner, to a South Londoner. Yeah, so being really specific is what I like to do. So myself and the guy who played my husband, Manny, he was a true Manc, and I mean, he'd even do the rolled R's. Karen. It's like, oh, okay. So we spent a lot of time together, and if there was anything that didn't sound right, or I didn't quite sound perfect enough, I'd go, Manny, help me with this. What's the sound? Listen, listen, listen. And then that would be another one I'd be armed with. So it sort of built itself up until it became completely second nature, to the point where many people thought I was from Manchester.
That's a high compliment.
I just did something in a movie, which I'm not going to talk about. And there was some English crew, and they said, oh, she's Northern. No. And he went, I don't know, but I'm from wherever, Wakefield, and I was an absolute fan of Shameless. I said, no, London, can you not hit? He went, he honestly thought I was a Manc. Most people do, or did back then. I think it's, you know, since finishing, it was hard to kind of, I'm not Northern. That was me being an actor and playing a character.
So in addition to all this stuff you're doing as an actor, you also have, I guess we would call it a website or an online magazine, Those London Girls, which one of the few long interviews I could find of you that was on video, which I was excited about because I like to get a read on people's personalities before I speak to them, if I can anyway. And I loved your whole vibe where you're just going on tangents about beauty and things like that. I mean, not to be completely stereotypical girl, but I mean, I do have a long line of skincare products on my desk in front of me, so I got really excited. But do you want to share a bit about that and how you came to make it and what your whole mission is with that?
It's kind of evolved. So back then it was more, well, Those London Chicks was about creating a space like the old communities of women, where you have a good old chinwag about anything. So it's about whatever women want to talk about, which is everything. We don't just want to talk about, does my bum look big in this fashion stuff, or, you know, how to do a smoky eye, but we also want to talk about all sorts of things. The only thing we don't touch on is politics, as in UK politics. That is a no-no. And one of the taglines of London Chicks, if you haven't got anything positive to say, don't say it. Like your mum used to say to you, there's a saying in England, if you haven't got anything nice to say, don't say it. And that is the premise of Those London Chicks. It's about positivity. So if a reviewer would go to a theatre, I'd always say, even if you hated it, there must be something in there that's positive. You can't have just hated it 100%. I don't think that's possible of anything. There's always going to be a bright light somewhere. So that's the kind of ethos of the entire magazine, which is that of positivity, that of beefing each other up, celebrating female achievement, celebrating women, body positivity, mental positivity. Yeah, it's tips on, you know, things to do, see, feel, because we've got some amazing contributors, life coaches, business coaches, people cooking vegan treats, cookery, yoga, sport, and it's evolved. So it's an ever moving part, is what London Chicks is. You know, there's no strong definition of what it is, and I think we've just sort of rolled with the punches. So in the beginning it was a sort of, you know, typical female, and I say typical, but you know, lots of magazines in the 90s, noughties were about skincare, and we've got that, but we've also got other things. It's also a platform to celebrate and help promote female charities. So we do a lot of work with spreading the word with things like the Eve Appeal. And the Eve Appeal looks at the 5 gynae cancers. They're a charity that looks at funding for research. We support Pink Ribbon Foundation, which is about breast cancer and helping those who are affected by breast cancer, which is nearly almost everyone, whether you know a friend, a relative, a mother. So we're able to, Solace Women's Aid, I've been extremely proactive with them, again, about the protection of women and children against male violence. We're able to champion that, and that has taken more of a front seat to the things we were doing in the interview. That was when we first started, sort of 4 or 5 years ago. Now I think it's matured, because it now has kind of global people looking at some of the stuff we put out, but more of a global feel to it in terms of what we discuss on it. The only thing I ask is that there's a takeaway for the reader at the end of it. I don't want blah, 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 blah for no reason. That there's a takeaway and it's something positive.
Mm. Yeah, and I love the artwork on Those London Chicks website with I'm assuming you have a co-editor or a co-founder or something. It's the two of you at the top. And I was going, oh, that's lovely artwork. It's really
and
pretty.
what was wonderful is she was, at the beginning, we absolutely had no funds whatsoever. And the thing about it is it's got a you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back kind of feel to it. So, for example, if someone puts forward some stuff and they've got a small business, we will promote the small business. And with the little figures at the top, it was an amazing artist, body painter, who did those little figurines for us. And we did the rest ourselves, kind of trying to work it out. But we then did a massive promotion of her, but we had no funds whatsoever at the beginning, none.
Yeah, well, and I love seeing women uplift other women, but I think we've had a pretty well-rounded chat, and a lot of the people that are tuning in want to know little tidbits to do with you being one of the cast members of Zack Snyder's Justice League. And I promise there is a relevant segue here when I'm talking about empowering women, because Zack Snyder, as a filmmaker, he really celebrates women and he really values strong women. And in a lot of the stories that he has, if we're talking about this project specifically anyway, sure, he has said Victor Stone, Cyborg, is the heart of the film. And of course, his heart is his mother. And a lot of the trauma that we've seen, that's not a spoiler, it's in the trailer and Zack has talked about it, but it's about his mother and the love that he has. So was that something refreshing for you to work with, even though he's this big name director, but somebody that really does value and celebrate empowered women in that way?
You could tell. I've got to say, you talk about Victor's heart, Zack's heart is in that story. You can look at the trailers, you can feel the man's heart, and he's like that as a human being. So absolutely amazing to work with somebody who you can feel that's important to him, to celebrate women's, strong women's stories. But the whole thing that we're looking at, because again, I'm not going to talk too deeply about it, but even through the trailers, you can feel the man's heart. You can feel it. You can see it and you can feel it. And the thing that made it special is I've got to talk about Ray.
Yes, I was going to ask about Ray, because of course that's who you worked with for a lot of the time.
I love him. He's one of the most talented actors. Now, I've been at this for 20 odd years. I know I look 20 something, but darling, I'm not.
Of course you do.
He is one of the most talented actors I've ever had the pleasure of working with. You can see from the trailer, he's an emotionally intelligent actor. It's just there. I was a bit nervous, and we hugged on first meeting for a minute, a whole minute. And it was like, hi. I just knew. Because sometimes in this business, you could be paired with someone that you might not. And it's harder work to get a connection. I absolutely adore Ray. And I am excited for the fans who fought hard to see gorgeous Zack's vision. I'm excited. That's all I'm going to say. Not that I've seen it, but from what I can see of the trailers, what Zack was like as a human being, and of course, Ray, I'm excited for people to see, the new shots in the new trailer. Oh my God, with him looking out of the window.
Yes.
I wanted to scoop him up and make it okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he's brilliant.
But the whole sort of filming, during these times have been such an eye-opener. One of the things I'm really proud of humanity for is our ability to really quickly adapt. This is unprecedented. Apart from the movies, we've not seen, never would we have thought we'd be in a situation where we're unable to have human contact with people outside our bubble, that, you know, we have to stay in, the streets are empty, the NHS are working even harder to save lives, people are dying in their we never thought that would be a thing. And I'm just, the thing that I find positive about this, because that's who I am as a human being, there's always got to be something. I'm a glass half full type of woman. And the positive, some of the positive things would be how we as human beings have adapted and changed tack because we've had to. But that's the human resilience. That's our soul. This is where we're like animals, where survival, and I think globally there's something really beautiful that's come out of having to survive in these sorts of circumstances, horrible circumstances. But we get stories of, you know, in the first sort of wave where governments were saying, that's it, lockdown. We were getting wonderful pictures of people in Italy, where they were doing it before, Italy or Spain, of them singing in Italian in their houses, but through the windows. Beautiful things like that, which would just, I don't want to start crying, but which would make, it would spur us on wherever we were in the world, going, we've got this, we can do this. We're as a world, we're fighting something, and there was a togetherness with us because of this. So there's lots of tiny moments of light in terms of humanity through this period of time, I think, because it's crazy, you know, how the arts industry, how film and TV have managed to carry on. One of the things, again, is I've been very, very proud of my brothers and sisters in the arts. For years, people thought, oh, you're an actor, oh, it's easy, whatever. Well, we weren't saving lives. We're not brain surgeons, we're not key workers. However, during this time, if you didn't have an Amazon or a Netflix or a television program to put on, or a CD to listen to, and I say CD, that you can tell how old I am. But, you know, if you didn't have a piece of music to listen to, an album we'd be in trouble. Mentally, emotionally, we would be in trouble. And so for the first time, the world were able to see, oh, yeah, oh, without that relief, that emotional relief of the arts in whatever form, a book to read, whatever, we would be there would be big problems. There would have been, you know, really, really big problems. So, you know, seeing how in certain environments, staying safe and filming during these times have been really, really extraordinary. And it's weird how quickly we adapt, because I'm quite a huggy person. So one of the weird things for me was not to
no
be able
touching,
to,
social distancing.
Exactly. So I've been on a set where it's been amazing, and the safest I've felt. So things like dividing the stairs. So you go up one way and down another, the whole social distancing. In the makeup chair, already screens coming up, that being a normal thing. You just, wow, that was quick. How quickly we adapt. Yeah, extraordinary. And like I said, the main thing, I wanted it to become second nature. And I think for most people it has now. We're very aware. Do you know, sometimes I watch some stuff on TV where there's massive hugs or they're touching doorknobs, and I've got a little, already, you know what I mean? I'm going, I hope you wash your hands. Yeah,
That was a
crazy.
nightmare. So many people were exposing themselves for having bad hygiene, where they're going, like, I think when it first kicked off, there were so many people that were making themselves look really foolish on Twitter by basically revealing that they don't know what the correct technique is to
I
wash your
know.
hands. And it's just going, how have you been alive all this
I know.
time? You don't know how to wash your hands.
I know. So it's exposed the dirties. Ugh. Yeah, no. I mean, I've always been quite, my mind plays horrible tricks. So I spend a lot of time, working away, a lot of time in a hotel, and it's terrible. And this is before all this. It's almost a ritual. The antibacterial wipes, the doorknobs, the taps, the remote control, every doorknob in a suite. I'm one of those and always have been. Because my mind will play blue light tricks. That blue. Yeah, I almost wanted to get one. And I thought, if I get a blue light, I'd never
You'll never
leave my
stop
house.
using it.
I know. I thought, better not. My husband said, no way, Karen. No way. Yeah, you'll never leave the house. So, yeah, it's dreadful. The imagination of an actor.
So you mentioned a bit about how Zack has this huge fandom that rallied behind him, and obviously that's why we now get to see your beautiful work in his film. I promise I'm not asking about spoilers, but being that this is part of a longer story and there were other films that came before it, what were your thoughts when you watched them and, the artistry, the storytelling? Because I think a lot of people have turned to those films even more now because hope is such a recurring thing in them.
Yes. That's, again, his heart. He is incredibly gifted. From a technical point of view, even some of those shots are mind-blowing. So it's interesting. You just said the word artistry, didn't you? Yes, that's him. That's him. He is, in the truest sense, an artist. His films before, I like the grading. One of the things I love about his films is the minute you switch something on, you're in it. It's not like you're half looking at your phone or you're in it, because he transports you there into a world wholeheartedly. Looking at these fantastic, and the way he creates shots, and yeah, you're in it. You're in the moment. There's none of this fiddling around. That's what I really love. And I think, speaking of hope, there's always themes of hope, but also the escapism part of it. We've got enough going on out there. There's enough scary, horrible things out there. It's nice to just go, right, I'm going to enter a world. And it's the first 5 seconds he's grabbed you and you're in there.
I just like that he ticks all the boxes as far as there's the very obvious visual style and aesthetic that he has going, but also as someone who is not white, I often don't feel included in the storytelling, but with him, it's not just the surface level matter of being inclusive, but he'll put really important themes and issues into the films. Like the whole arc of Superman as a character is very much, he's an immigrant, he's a refugee, and he doesn't know where he fits into this society that he has grown up in, and he doesn't know if he's allowed to fully be himself. And I mean, I can relate to that as somebody who, I'm Japanese, but I don't live in Japan. So, I like that you get to be part of this larger mythos that he's building with all of that, because it's, it's putting women at the forefront. It's, empowering multicultural groups to know that we have a place in these other societies that we live in.
And I think he tells the truth in terms of human behavior. That's why there's longevity there. It's the human condition, and telling the truth of the human condition. That has longevity.
Absolutely. I won't ask you to speak on the more unpleasant sides of it, but obviously Ray has been in the news a lot with talking about what happened back in 2017. And one of the things he mentioned was his barber. I think I wrote down the name, Wayne Nembard. And that really stood out to me because there's so many ongoing socio-political conflicts to do with Black hair. So immediately when I heard that, I was like, oh no, I fully believe that, because we see so many stories about it's not just in the industry, but in, you know, schools, in the workplace, of people either getting fired or getting punished for their natural hair texture. So from your perspective as a working actor, how is it for you navigating the industry in regards to your hair care and your hair treatment, your hair styling on any set, not just talking about this one project?
I must say, I've been really lucky. What I'm starting to find a lot is, if people don't know, they ask. And that's all I ask of in this world. If you don't know, ask. Let it be a collaborative thing. I just did a series in Finland. It was a co-production between Sweden and Finland. And these lovely women in makeup. When I'd gone to Sweden to have a read through and a chat about the costumes and what the look was going to be, they were amazing. They were honest. That's the point. Oh, I don't know what makeup. Tell me what numbers. You tell me what number mixes you're used to for your skin tone. Just amazing. And they were scared of the hair thing. Is there anything I could be doing? What they asked. That's all I ask. Rather than, I mean, I've heard some horror stories that I don't even want to get into. Really negative stuff. And negative things said, like, oh, I can't get the comb through. You know, stuff like that, which I'm incredulous at, but that was going on. I have been lucky enough to have worked with some fantastic makeup designers who also, for example, when I was on Shameless, there was a new company that started up, and the designer was a woman called Emma, and she'd go, Karen, I've just seen a new brand, and there's a primer and there's some colours. When you're next off, go into town and look at the thingy and say which colours you like. I want to try this. And that is what I'm talking about. So there's a real openness, which is why I'm glad the dialogue is happening. You know, when I first started, someone put touche éclat under my eyes. Now that's for European skin. By the time it dried and I got back to the dressing room, I looked like I'd been punched because it had gone grey.
Oh, that's
Yes.
always an issue that I've noticed when you look at older photos, not even from that long ago. I want to say 10, 20 years ago. So still this century of Black celebrities, and they'll be on the red carpet, and I'm just going, why is your skin gray? Like, but it's because the beauty industry has been really, you know, bad about creating shades for Black women and Black skin. So
extraordinary. I mean, I remember being in a theatre show, and we had, like, it was quite a physical show, and we had body stockings, and the costume designer came in and said, right, I've got you all nude underwear. Who's nude?
Oh,
who's nude? It was yes. And I did say out loud, I said, who's nude? He went red. I don't think he thought. So this is the thing that's really important about dialogue. Some people aren't intentionally right, I'll phrase this another way.
They're not being malicious, but they're being careless or thoughtless.
Yes, and also I think it's conditioning. It takes dialogue to unlearn. So to unlearn and learn questions, or a moment to check yourself. A lot of it is unconscious bias because of conditioning. Now, I know that's a hot word. It's a hot word for a reason. People just didn't think, oh God, I didn't think that. Of course you didn't. That's why it's important to talk about this stuff, so that you do have a moment where you go, oh, right. So if I say nude, I'm talking about a majority in my head, but nude doesn't mean everybody, and that's not inclusive. There are 2 Black women here. That's not the underwear that we would call nude, invisible underwear for our skin. So that moment, and I mean, he did go red, and I didn't mean to expose him. I was just shocked, because that's what he would have said. That would have been normal. He would have done that for 10, 15 years. And it would have been great. back then he might have had where it was nude was perfect for everybody, because it's a different landscape now. So open your eyes and ears and be receptive to learning, because it's having to undo all that unconscious stuff, and we all have it.
Oh, yes.
Whatever. Yeah, it could be, you know, someone called Gareth. I might meet a Gareth, and my first boyfriend might have been a Gareth who was horrible to me, or so there's an attachment to the name. Or it could be, I hate cartoon socks because my horrible English teacher had cartoon socks. So if I see somebody with cartoon socks, it's a problem. So we all have, because we've lived lives and we've had horrible things happen to us. We've got attachment to things and names and ways we've learnt, our upbringing. There's all sorts of stuff that make up unconscious bias. And the one thing I ask of anybody is to just check themselves, to be open enough to check themselves. That's all. That's the start. That's where we start to be, to move forward positively. I think, yeah, it's a thing of, how asking the question, I don't understand something, so you write it off. You know what I mean? That seems to have been the thing that has gone on for 30, 40, 50 years and way but beyond that. But I'm talking about in our sort of in this century and the end of the last century. You just do stuff. You just, you know, people watching, for example, this whole thing that's just happened in terms of the Black Lives Matter. Now, the knee jerk, which was quite extraordinary, is, and there's some that I didn't even realize, stuff I was watching in the 80s and 90s and the noughties. Some of that stuff was shocking. And yet that's part of my growing up. That is what I've had. That is what I had to put up with if I turned the TV on. But I didn't know any better. And that's why it went on for years and years and years and years and years. There's some of the stuff where I go, oh my God, I'm sure I watched that. And I might have had a reaction, but I didn't say anything. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So this is so, this time is so, it's so important and unprecedented in many ways. If this is, we're now having the conversations that we need to have.
Yeah.
And it needs to continue. I don't want this stuff to be a phase. I need it to continue. It needs to continue.
Yeah. And there's always a lot of pushback as well when people are ahead of the curve and when they push things forward. So they get upset when they see women as leads or people of color as leads. And they think, oh, you're just doing that you're doing that for good PR, essentially is what they think you're doing. But you need people to tell those stories that mean them authentically. Like if we bring it back to Zack, I promise I'm not trying to goad you into saying spoilers. It's just relevant to what we're talking about. But Zack had a film called Sucker Punch, and that was before the Me Too movement came out. So I think people really didn't understand that film was addressing a very dark thing that exists in society about a very patriarchal world and how it treats women and how it objectifies them and how they feel entitled to women and women's bodies. And that film is about giving those women their own power back. And a lot of people did not understand that. So, you know, I'm glad that we have allies like Zack. Not that he's ever called himself an ally, but, you know, I will call him an ally as a woman. I will say that he's an ally to the community, you know, of we need people who use their privilege like he has to open the door for the rest of us and you know, give us the platform to put those stories out there. Because everything you're talking about, I mean, you go back and a lot of art does not age well. His art ages very well.
Exactly. That's what I meant about telling the truth. That's why it has longevity. And that is the truth. Even though people might not have accepted it then or confused by it, that's what he's really good at. And that has longevity. Yeah, like you say, some films or TV does not age well. Some shocking, but this is why it's such an unconscious, deep down issue, seeing a woman in power, for example. So or if she is in power, the person in power, for example, I don't know if you've seen any of The Crown, and we're talking about Thatcher. Now,
like, I can't think about Thatcher without seeing that one clip of that little elderly Scottish lady who got interviewed on the news, and she said, "I'll put a stake through her heart just to make sure she's dead and won't come back." And I'm like, well, I don't blame her for saying that. And the reporter says something like, "Oh, that's an awful thing to say." And she goes, I don't care. Like, too bad.
I mean, that's some scary stuff. But throughout history, the way she was a powerful woman, regardless of politics, right? A bit egos, whatever. I'm not going to get into Thatcher. I really don't want to get into Thatcher. But things like, for example, Lady Macbeth, a powerful woman, and yet there's a line in Shakespeare where she says, "Unsex me here." So even back then, anyone who's not just seen as Mother Earth doing what women should be doing, but a leader of thought, would need to be male. I'm not explaining myself very well. She says, "Unsex me here, fill me from the top to the toe, full of direst cruelty." Now, she's a murderess for all intents and purposes, her and her husband. But the fact that she asked to be unsexed, as in not female. So messages like that we are only supposed to be doing certain things. I mean, I'm talking about a murderess, and that's not necessarily the trail of thought I wanted to go down, but female leaders would have to become more masculine to be accepted. Now that is on its way out. So a Thatcher, you know, those 30 years ago, suddenly lowered her voice a few octaves, wore a suit that favored a man. So being a leader, you couldn't look the way that we might want to look. There's so many, you know what I mean? To be in that position, she was told, you need to do this in order to communicate correctly. You need to lower your voice. You need to appear as though you're male. No, but we're not. So suddenly we're now going, we're women and we are many things. And to be a woman doesn't mean that I'm not powerful. It's like the whole thing about the word bitch. I'm not going to swear, but we suddenly call a strong woman the B word. We'd call the man, yes, he's confident, he's powerful, but a woman is a B word. Those are the sorts of things we've had on a plate growing up. That to be powerful, you have to be masculine. You can't be who you are and bring in what you know in order to make things different. That's the thing about diversity. It's all about difference and what you bring to the table as a human being, not pretending to be something else, being who you are. So Kamala Harris, amazing and different on so many levels, and strong and powerful and feminine. She's a woman and yet articulate. There are so many women coming up in politics now who are articulate, strong women. We're not men, we're women. You know, and that's bringing who they are to the table. That's diversity.
So interesting segue, since we're talking about women and you are in a show coming up, Black Narcissus, that is very women-centric and women-led. And I was very intrigued I was able to get press screeners because as soon as you were coming on, I went, right, let me try to work some keyboard magic and get some screeners so I can know what I'm talking to her about. But it almost felt like a very interesting look back into just how taboo or how stigmatized female desire was, just women being able to want whatever they wanted and to want more. So maybe if you would like to talk a bit about that project that you have and the material and your work on it. I think you went to Nepal to film, if I read that correctly.
Some of it was, which was extraordinary. Um, I when I got the role, one of the major things for me was to get my mindset into that place. And it was quite extraordinary. I read a few books, and there's one by, it's very old and it's been translated a million times, Sister Elvira of Spain. She was incredible, and the book was like a journal. And she made being a nun sound like the most amazing experience ever. I have always tried to play characters and leave my judgment at the door the minute I get a part, even the minute when I'm auditioning. Leave my judgment, leave Karen's views aside so I can wholeheartedly get into the heart and mind of the person I'm playing. Now, playing a nun is the most extraordinary thing. When I tried the costume on for the first time, I had to run down from Newcastle to London to make the costume fitting because I was filming something in Newcastle, and my character in Newcastle wore nail varnish and jewelry, so I still had the nail varnish on. And as I was layered up bit by bit, the finishing article with that much of my face showing made me cry. It was a very, very emotional, strange feeling to only have that much showing. And then I looked at my hands and saw the nail varnish, and it felt, I don't know, I had an emotional response just by wearing what she wore, which was modesty. And we express ourselves. I'm very expressive. As you can see, I use my hands a lot. I like clothes. I like doing my hair. I like a bit of nothing. You are stripped down, and all that was left was, so already I knew this was going to be a very special project emotionally for me. But yeah, it was incredible for all of us. And the nuns, they are my sisters. It was quite extraordinary how close we got, as you would if you were a nun, and these are your sisters who you live, you pray, you sleep, that's it. And one of the things I found quite extraordinary about it is it looks at many themes, but from Sister Philippa's perspective, the thing that I found extraordinary is, in order to fulfill God's work, who they were married to, who they've dedicated their lives to, these women traveled in the most extraordinary circumstances to get to the Himalayas, to this place, to build this school and do God's work. Now, I, even now, wouldn't think of setting off with a small horse, a little rollout thing that you sleep on. These women were extraordinary, and to do what they believed in. It might not be what I believe in. I'm not a nun, but they believed that they were doing the right thing. The conflict throughout, their the theme, as you were saying, about sexuality, color, is highlighted in this story because they're in Asia, and it's the place is extraordinarily beautiful. The colors of the clothes that the Nepalese were wearing, the heat was in stark contrast to, you've just seen the picture of the sort of beige neutral habits, which is a pared down version. So that conflict of culture is one of the overriding themes in it. But yeah, I think there's a lot in Black Narcissus to get your teeth into. And I do believe that different audiences are going to get different things. Different human beings are going to get different things from it. because there's an overriding cultural thing. There's a spooky element. Most people who've seen the film and talk about the way it made them feel. And I think that's extraordinary. Just like the Maya Angelou quote, where people don't necessarily remember what you say, they remember how you made them feel.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I've said, oh, what have you been up to? And I said, well, I just did Black Narcissus. And they go, oh, was that film from 1947? Yes. Oh, that was spooky. So they remember how it made them feel. Now you go back and watch it now and it might not have the same effect because we've got all this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, weirdly, from the trailers, it's got that feel. I think the director and the producer, one of the co-producers, Andrew McDonald, is actually the grandson of Emmerich Pressburger, and he was part of a team with Michael Powell who did some hugely iconic films in the 40s, back in the golden era of film. The Red Shoes, he did the original Black Narcissus. And so for his grandson, Andrew's an incredible producer anyway, to get on board a team of people, in my mind, it just felt special. So we had a wonderful director, Charlotta Bruce Christensen, and so hugely gifted. Us, a team of nuns, it's just the right time. It's the right time, because what's amazing is they don't profess to be angels, because that's one of the things missing. Sometimes when we talk about wanting an equality, an equal playing field as women, what I don't want is over righteous female characters.
Mm-hmm.
Really? No.
Those aren't interesting. You need the nuance and the flaws, because character. That's why so many people love villains more than the heroes a lot of the time.
Exactly. But something real and telling the truth, because nobody is perfect. Nobody's over righteous. No one lives that life. So the thing that's really beautiful about these nuns is very clear that their failings become more apparent in this environment. That's why she keeps saying, so for example, in the trailer, Sister Philippa says, it's all a bit too beautiful. Now, one could argue, what's wrong with beauty? It's taking her away from why she went there. It's supposed to be about God and my relationship with God and God's work, or her relationship. And so the whole environment, and you could see some beautiful shots of how special the place was, brings up their flaws. When I was I do yoga, and I was on the roof of the place we were staying at, which was a small space. Every direction you turned in was a different view. It was just breathtaking. And I'd sit after my yoga practice and just, my eyes would just feast on this purity. And the owner of the building came up and said to me, "Are you all right?" And I said, "How on earth can I be not, where everywhere I turn, there's a whole feast?" And he said, "Yes, it's the truth." And I went, "Oh." In my mind, for a split second, I thought, what are you talking about? And I said, "Yes," politely. And he went, and I stopped and took a moment and went, he's absolutely right. That view is untouched. It's too dangerous to go up there. That is the truth. I'm so privileged as Sister Philippa to have seen that, to build who she is. That vista is the truth. Everywhere you leave your home now, it's built up. Everywhere you go, even the countryside is built up. That is untouched. The truth. And once I got what he said, I was just like, oh my goodness. Wow. That's Sister Philippa. And that's when it hit me. And this was before filming. And I was like, oh, that's it. That's it. Mm-hmm. So it was very special. I'm excited for people to see it. I really am.
Yeah, I did get sent a little byline from the publicist, so I want to make sure that I say it on the show so that they don't get mad at me. Black Narcissus premieres on FX on November 23rd, beginning at 8 p.m., and the complete series will be available to stream the next day exclusively on FX on Hulu. So if you would like to see more from Karen, that will be how you go doing that. I don't know for outside of US territories, but at least for US territories, that is where it will be available. Another thing I wanted to ask you about is that really long interview that you had done before that I watched the whole thing to make sure that I did my homework. And you described yourself as a mischievous creative. What do you mean by that? And do you still feel that way?
Oh wow, when did I say?
I think
When
the
did
interview was from
I am a bit mixy.
2016, maybe? Give or
Wow,
take?
yes, I am a little bit mischievous. Oh wow, maybe wow, mischievous creative.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot. It's
Yeah,
not a
I
it's
must
not
have
a
felt
trick
that at the time.
question.
I must have felt that at the time. I am mischievous as a human being, to be honest. I'm a bit mixy and I'm a bit mischievous. But yeah, I always like to, if I think about what that could mean for me now, I always like to think of not the obvious way of thinking about things, the characters I play. I've just written a screenplay and with a female lead. And yeah, there's elements of mischievous in it. My character goes through quite a long journey, but there are moments of absolute joy that are childlike. There's something about women's laughter, women's you know how women can be minxy with each other, and when I say minxy, I don't mean I mean fun and you know, I don't know, yeah,
You're
I would always,
communicating well. You don't need words because you're giving
I
us
just
everything else. So I understand exactly what you're saying.
yeah, just a kind of let loose, no judgment, just do your thing. I suppose that's what I'm kind of, yeah, because to be honest with you, I don't think I'd describe myself like that now as such, even though there's always going to be that element in me. There always was. So I'm a giggler and I cackle. In interviews, generally, I look quite put together, apart from this lovely long chat with you, where you're starting to see that I'm a bit, because I am. Yeah, I'm a little bit bonkers, to be honest. In my normal life, I generally play very put together sort of characters, very solid, especially as I'm getting old. There's a side to me which is a bit bonkers and mischievous.
But you do create, in addition to acting, you do some other, obviously you're talking about writing, and you've produced some films as well. So do you want to share a bit about being a producer and also the projects that you have produced? There were 2 listed. I don't know if there's more that IMDb did not have written, but those were on there.
Yes. So one was most recently was a pilot, which kind of won festivals, and you know the whole thing about trying to get people to look at it. We kind of did a whole summary and treatment for what the whole series would look like, and it's about sort of 8 families in social housing, but not the sort of stereotypical thing you get where it deals with hoods and hoodlums. No, a thing about human beings in a particularly socio-economic, coming from a socio-economic particular background, but fighting and wanting to know more, wanting more. And I don't mean more as in leaving the estate as such, but normal lives, because there's still a stigma in this country. We call it council estates. You guys will call it social housing. I'm not sure what, but about behind closed doors, people's struggles. And it was the whole thing about addressing, I don't think you have the same thing there, addressing a lack of representation of the working classes. There is a distinct lack of representation. And if it is represented, it's in a particular way that's really negative.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I've definitely had some thoughts about the classism of the British entertainment industry and just society in general, but I mean it's very pervasive. I think people don't really get that if they're not from the UK or haven't spent a sufficient amount of time there. They have this very glamorized, they see the really big name actors that come from the UK and they just think, "Oh, it's really lovely and posh." And I'm
Everyone
going,
drinks
"Yeah.
tea. Yes.
Yeah." Which
It's
is
it's
not
it's
true.
I suppose the breakdown would be in the US would be money based. So even though we call it the class system, a lot of it is to do with money, which is why I talked about a particular socioeconomic background, meaning it's money. In the old days, class meant something different. We still use it, and I've just used it by saying working class because it's the most immediate thing for a Brit to understand what I'm talking about. But it is hugely money based.
Mm.
If you're in social housing, it's because you're in a particular wage bracket, and it's money based. In America, it would be money based.
Mm.
It's, do you know what I mean? So we wouldn't call it class in the US, would you? What would you?
I mean, I think class is pretty applicable. I just know that a friend of mine who's in the UK had talked a bit about I won't get into what they do for a living, but just they've had I guess you could say customer service issues where people who are from a certain upper class, they get real upset if you don't use their fancy lord or whatever titles, and it's like, come on, we're all going to the same shops. Don't be
Yeah,
ridiculous demanding that I call you lord or sir or what, like the type of titles that come before names that you don't even see them outside of the UK, really, which is very funny to
yeah.
me.
And to be honest, most people don't interact with Lord or Lady, whoever. That's not real life. To be honest, most
Mm,
people don't encounter that. The thing that's more dangerous is the bits that go beyond that,
mm,
or behind that. That is the extreme. So
mm.
Lord and Lady so and so is the extreme. Class rears its ugly head in a more everyday way.
Oh yeah.
It could be the way you speak.
Mm. Oh
You know,
gosh.
you drop the T's and drop the R's, and suddenly, and it's terrible. But that is the kind of way it is.
Yeah.
And and to do with that, that has a whole wider connotation. So, for example, if I could have gone through medical school and I'm your GP, and there's a whole thing in your mind that if you go into a GP, that I'm going to be a particular class. And with that class is a particular accent. So if I suddenly said, "Hi, come take a seat, take a seat. What can I do for you? What seems to be the problem?" I know that the person sat on the patient would be scared and want to leave. Why? Because of unconscious bias and what they've been taught with. They're expecting their doctor, "Hi, take a seat. And how can I help you? What's the problem?" And
Mm,
already there's a difference.
mm-hmm,
So it's the class discrimination is not about that's
mm,
over there. It's every day. It's
mm-hmm,
in a very more it's everyday casual classism that
mm.
occurs.
I mean, even the industry is riddled with that. It's always the old money boarding school people that go to the best drama schools and get the best agents, and then you find out their ancestors owned slaves. And I'm going, of course they did, and that's why you have that much. And of course, and it's so typical. And it's very, even just on a less insidious dimension, I just don't like the kind of snobby attitude. I feel like people are so rude. As I mean, I feel bad bringing him up because I just bring him up too much because I love him. But Danny Dyer, the way Danny Dyer gets treated by the rest of the industry because he talks like that, and I
Yes,
like that really bothers me because I've never seen
he's
him act,
great.
but I think he's so funny and he's so
Yes, me
charming.
too.
I mean, every interview I watch, I feel better about my life because he just makes me happy.
Me too.
But he gets limited and he gets typecast and he gets
Yeah,
put in a box, and I'm not honing in on him as just one person, but what that represents in the industry as a whole, and the stories that get made and the opportunities people have to play characters. I mean, just because he talks a certain way, and he's talking about Cinderella, he's like, yeah, I love him. But
yeah, so do I. And you're exactly right. And that's kind of a problem in the industry that's starting to shift a little. You know, going back to theatre, somebody wrote a piece, a working class actor wrote a piece about why is it that the working class accents are only messengers or
Was it Christopher Eccleston?
lords? Yes, it was.
See, I
Yes.
pay attention to this stuff. This is
You're
why I knew we would
brilliant.
get along.
Yeah, you're brilliant because yes, and he's right. So without that, you know, we're talking about dialogue and how speaking about these things makes you think about your own life and how you are in the world. I just went, he's absolutely right. Because there's part of me that's always felt, because of my upbringing, that I'm not even thinking about your nonsense. I can remember being brought up in a way of, you will, not you can't, you will, which is probably what makes me a glass half full type of person. So I always, I would never go, I can't do that because you're going to think I'm working. No. That was never a thing that would stop me from doing it, because that's the frightening thing. Sometimes people are scared of going into the industry thinking they're not going to get work, they're going to be typecast. I never even thought that. So I'm lucky in that respect. Once I entered the industry, I started to see some stuff, but I never thought I couldn't. So when he brought up the whole thing about the messengers or whatever, I just thought, yes, in the time I was going to watch theatre before I became professional, that was a huge thing. That was a huge thing. I've been lucky enough, and I say lucky enough because I think it's important visually I've always played fairly powerful women, and that's important to me in status and otherwise. Now, you could argue, why are you saying fortunate? And the reason I'm saying fortunate is it's a gem. And it's a gem because I'm showing you something other than where you might want to put me. I'm showing you something other. So my little black face on TV playing someone really powerful is going to hit somebody and go, I can. You know, and it means, it's like Obama. When he was elected in this country, they did a whole thing in a school. I don't want to cry.
It's a safe space. Feel whatever you're feeling.
Oh gosh, it was just, they interviewed small children, and they kind of knew what a president was, but kind of called it a prime minister. But I'm talking like 8, 9-year-olds. Their hope, you could hear them going, I want to be that. An ethically diverse school in London, typical little school, and going around talking to little kids. And what do you think? It was so wonderful, because that says I can. Why? Because there he is. You know what I mean?
Yes,
there
absolutely.
He is, and there his amazing wife is. There they are as a family. There they are. So even if you don't know politics and you're a kid, you see it. And that's my point. That's why I'm saying lucky enough. Because another thing I wasn't going to do in my career is play those stereotypical. I'm just not interested. You can get someone else to do. It's just not going to be me. And the thing that's unfortunate is someone will always do that because they might need the money. I would rather go and stack shelves in Tesco. Throughout my career, I can't do it. I get embarrassed. There was something I went for, and it was an accent, an African accent, and I did the first pass of the first scene, and I sort of went, she went, great. Could you be a little more
sassy?
No. I said what? I said what? The accent? Do you want it stronger? No. The accent was great. Could you be a little more? And I said, what? And I looked at her straight in her eyes. She went red. I hope with that moment, I've made you think a little bit about something. We both know what you meant, and I'm not playing that. I could have actually gone, thank you very much. This isn't going to work, and leave. Unfortunately, we don't do that. But that moment when I said, what? I knew what she wanted. The stereotypical, whatever, all that nonsense, all that. I'm not doing that. I would be embarrassed. I would be embarrassed. I'd be ashamed of myself. It's
Mhm.
not going to be me doing that. And you
Yeah.
shouldn't ask, what are you? I really wish I'd pressed it to know exactly what word she would have used. She went red and I backed off. I thought,
Mhm.
you know what I'm talking about. Now think about that. When I've left the room, think about what you were asking me to do indirectly, because
I
it's not
mean,
on.
I think Western cultures need to learn the value of shame and shaming people more because it's a great corrective tool. Like, as a Japanese person, everything is just about being shamed and being embarrassed and just apologize. We have like 12 different ways to apologize depending on what the situation is. It's like different phrase for sorry for being late. And, you know, it's not just a general umbrella, I'm sorry, you know, and it's just, yeah, no, you're going to look me in the face and you're going to
Yes.
tell me the racist thing you were going to
Yes,
say.
exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. She was, I mean, her mouth, I could hear her mouth drying up. Good. Now think about that. You need to think about that moment, because that's not on. I would have been really interested what she said to the girl after me, if she said the same sort of thing.
So I'm assuming
Because,
that you didn't book the job, perhaps?
oh, I wasn't interested. If they'd offered, it would have been a no. That's what I mean. I would have been embarrassed. Oh, well, I can't. It's just a no. It's just no. And that I've been like that since the beginning of my career. I can't. I get embarrassed. I'd be ashamed of myself. Do you know what I
Yeah,
mean? And then it's
of
there
course.
forever. Oh, no.
Yeah. Well, Lucy Liu, I think she had an expression. I think it was something her dad taught her, or I'm going to butcher it because I'm not remembering it, but it was basically just that with her career, she needs to accumulate. I'm going to swear, but it was what she said. When she said you have to accumulate fuck you money. So basically, it's like you need to have that kind of cushion so that if people try to offer you something that's beneath you, then you
Yes,
can just be like,
yes,
I have fuck you money, so I'm not
yes,
doing it.
yes. She's right.
Mm.
Absolutely. That is exactly it. That's it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm exactly the same. And that is why when when I do sort of chats with young actors, women, whoever they are, it would be about, especially young actors, get another job and be comfortable in knowing you've got another job, because you'll make choices based on money and be ashamed.
Yeah.
And this could be for female, I mean, you know, parts where you just go, and I'm naked for what reason? I know.
Mm-hmm.
And you get girls doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Having the FU money, that's what I'm saying, because you can say, I'm not comfortable with this, and I don't have the power, because you obviously want to put this in this because this is your little wet dream. But I'm not going to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to do it. So you find, you know, young actresses taking the job, feeling terribly uncomfortable, and it's always there.
Yeah.
It's always there. You filmed it.
Yeah. I mean, I think people need to be authentically themselves. I mean, if we circle back to the accent thing, I will never understand, especially if we're talking about actors, what does it matter what your accent is when you're off the clock, or even if you're just doing publicity? What does it matter how you speak when your job as an actor is to transform? So you
I
can do a
agree.
different accent for a role. Like, what does it matter if Danny Dyer is like, as soon as that foot goes in that glass trough, and you know, he's gonna talk whatever. And but that's how he talks in his downtime. What does it matter? He could do a
Exactly.
different accent. They
No,
never
you're
asked him
right.
to do a different accent, but he could do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You're absolutely right. And that's what I meant about the everyday casual classism that comes
Mm-hmm.
into play. Whether people want to admit it or not, it does. And that's, you know, the ingrown, oh, you know, this is the way I was born. This is the thing. We're now trying to shake up the universe. This time, having this time where we're having to separate and take stock and, you know, retreat and reflect is here for, it sounds dreadful, but it's all tied in. 2020 has been crazy for that. But having that opportunity to have a think about the way
Mm-hmm.
we're operating, the way we're treating the planet, you know, the way we treat each other, the things that have gone on in our lives that are unacceptable, but are the norm, so we continue those bad behaviors. Have a think. You've got time to reflect.
Mm.
Have those conversations. You know, the world is becoming smaller because we've got things like this. Have a
Mm-hmm.
chat with someone across the world.
Mm-hmm.
Educate yourself. This
Yes.
time is about jigging things up. I think the
Mm-hmm.
world is just trying to shake.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I'm glad that more diverse people are telling their own stories if we're talking about the arts. I mean, you mentioned writing and, you know, you've done some producing, because I think as nice as it is to have allies like Zack Snyder who use their platforms to bring more people to the table, really, there's just a level of awareness and perspective that we can bring that the allies cannot bring, you know.
Yes.
So we have to have those opportunities or make them for ourselves. And I did want to ask though, did you ever do any directing? Because you had sort of mentioned it in passing in one of the interviews that I watched, of saying maybe you had some interest in directing. So I wasn't sure if that was something you were still interested in, or if you had managed to do any directing.
Yes, I did a couple of things many moons ago, and the first thing I did was quite good. The second thing I did was a fatal mistake of not getting enough coverage, and it all collapsed. And this is terrible because it's a flaw of mine. I'm not very good at not being very good, and which makes me a really hard to teach anything, because I want to be amazing immediately. And back then that was a blow. I have relaxed a lot, and part of my dynamic over the last 15 years have been about, I will try, and if I don't succeed, I'll try again and again and again and dust myself off. But back then, oh my goodness, it was enough to put me off, just like the writing. So coming back into it is a whole, and now I'm grown. Yeah, that's something I'm definitely going to go there. I'm definitely going to, yeah, I've got a million one act scripts that might start off with short, but this whole adventure of writing my first full screenplay has been amazing. It's been 9-10 months of blood, sweat and tears, and 3 drafts, you know, when you have to go, I've got to completely, and I've enjoyed every single moment, and I forgot. And the whole thing about it may have taken 10 years to go the full hog again after somebody told me that don't give up your day job kind of thing. I gave it to a director, but the director wanted to hear a particular story from me. So he was very interested when I told him I wrote, from a perspective from a black woman, but this perspective was not what he wanted, as in it's supposed to be a woman who's dealing with her son with knife crime or hoods or drugs or, oh, right. So now I realize when he was trying to get around telling me that the subject matter's not, well, I'm another person. And now I've got the guts to say, not every story is what you want me to write about. This story is about a woman who it may not be out there, but it will be, you know, in time. Don't just think that certain communities can only tell certain stories. You know, the whole thing of, for example, Indian stories, Pakistani stories, lots of parts of Asia would all be about lots and lots and lots of films about arranged marriages. Because that's all that we want. You know what I mean? There's always a cultural thing where you go, oh, well, black people, gun crime and hoods and no. So to now have the guts to go, actually, this is valid. A story about a woman, her feelings about how she feels about the world, and having the space to actually want to rethink it, because it's not necessarily going to be about the next paycheck. Do you see what I mean? About the socioeconomic background, that you suddenly go, if I'm going to have a black story, that 9 times out of 10, it has to be about our history, the negative history, or about the next paycheck, because we're always going to be in the slant of a particular socioeconomic background. Well, no, what about the other black folk out there who might have space to be dealing with something else? I want to see those stories as well. Thank you. Yeah, it's just, you know, not adhering to what people want me to do or what
Mm-hmm.
people think I should be doing is a really powerful thing when people get a grip and go, oh, and that's why this time is so important. Because suddenly we're going, as women, actually what I've got to say, or me as a director, or me as a storyteller, is valid. It's completely valid too, you know? So, yeah.
Okay, so I'm gonna have to wrap up just about now, but I did want to ask you, since everyone is so interested in everything to do with Zack, what do you think makes him special and unique as a director? Because obviously you've worked with a number of directors, so what stands out for you?
Incredibly creative, a heart of gold, a very open heart, and fun. He's a fun energy. Because it's scary, you know, as an actor coming in, if you haven't got a director who's warm and you know, friendly, you'd be terrified, and you can't, as an actor, be as open or creative because you're scared of just a warm, inclusive person who's ridiculously creative and ridiculously talented.
Well, thank you so much for coming on, Karen. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Feel free to come back once the episodes are out and we can actually talk more specifically about your material, but it's been an absolute dream having you here with us.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.